Hello and welcome to the Power Lunch Live show with Michael Whitehouse, the guy who knows a guy. That's me. I am Michael Whitehouse, the guy who knows a guy. And every week we bring together 1 to 4 fantastic guests to talk about all kinds of interesting things, have some good free-flowing conversation. And this week we may have fewer than the average number of guests because I ran a 2-day summit this week, and normally Monday is when I send everything out to remind people to be here. And not having my Monday because I was running a summit, I got all verklempt and didn't actually send out the reminders until yesterday. So, and I know that one of our guests is ill and another one has a conflict. Another one I don't think got back to me. So we've got Mark Layder, which is awesome because he's the Biz Connector guy, which is pretty cool. He's got a business built around networking and turning connections into a profession, which is a concept near and dear to my heart. Before we get on to meeting Mark, let me share a couple things. A week from Monday is the Entrepreneur Summit because I do love screwing up my week by filling the Monday with summits. No, but it'll be awesome. It'll be one day event. It is June 6th from, what are the hours of that? 11 to 5 Eastern time. And if you go to guywhoknowsaguy.com/summits, that'll take you there. I believe entrepreneursummit.com now goes there too, but I haven't confirmed that link actually works. But we do have the domain because we fancy like that. This is a summit for business owners, entrepreneurs who happen to be geeks. So if you have a sword, a dragon, a TARDIS, or a spaceship in your office, I do, dragon, spaceship over there somewhere, then you should probably come to this summit. And if you don't, you should still probably come to this summit. So cool, says Catherine. Yes, Catherine, you are right. It is so cool. So that's what I've got coming up. You also may be interested to know about my Power 5 podcast, which I don't have a banner prepared for, but guyknowsaguy.com/power5 will get you updates on that, where I answer your business questions in 5 minutes or less on all manner of business and mindset things. So I'll get a promotion for that a bit later. But now, enough talking from me. It is time to meet our guest, Mark Layder. So, Mark, tell us about yourself and what makes you awesome.
What makes me awesome? Well, I'm from Liverpool in England. Is that awesome enough? Or
that is pretty awesome, yeah.
How much awesomeness do we want to do? I mean, I'm a cross between coaching and sales and business that has seen the business world morph into something that an awful lot of people are struggling in. And in our humble opinion, they don't need to be struggling in, and it's a fairly easy problem to solve. So, depending on where you want to go, that's the starter for 10.
All right. And actually, you might as well, because ordinarily, what we'd be doing right now is we would go around the room and we'd do the introductions of all of our guests. And now we've introduced all of our guests. Here they are. So for those of you who are new, either on the show or in the audience, I say that I have 2 producers, Serendipity and a Random Happenstance. When the show first started, I just had Serendipity, but then, we had to spread the load. So now it's Serendipity and Random Happenstance, and it has always, for as long as I've been doing the show, always worked out that my guests have been a fantastic mix. I think this is the 3rd time I've had only 1 guest, but those have also been awesome conversations. So Serendipity and Random Happenstance decided that it should be me and Mark, probably talking about networking kind of stuff. Hello, Facebook user. So it's interesting if you don't give StreamYard permission to show your name, it just says Facebook user. So then I get to be like the guy from Mastermind going, thank you, random citizen. And then later on, I find out who it is. But anyway, so let's talk a bit about this thing you do, Mark, the new BizParadigm in the collaboration economy.
Oh, sounds impressive, doesn't it?
It does sound pretty impressive. I'm going to give you the solo layout so you can tell us about it.
Sounds impressive. Well, it's not a word that we use that much, but it seems to be coming of age paradigm, because if you look up a guy called Joel Barker that we first were introduced way back in the early 90s, and I think his book was Discovering the Future, and with it's either the power of paradigms or that kind of words, but paradigms are things like, accepted ways that everybody does things, and everybody, if you bring a new thing to it, they'll almost shout you down for it. And whether it's a lot of people believe the earth was flat for a long time, and suddenly they discovered these telescope things and we said, oops, we got that wrong. Well, when there's a collective we got that wrong, there's a paradigm shift, and hence the new business paradigm is kind of stepping into the territory of something in our existing business paradigm is not working or not right, because we've got all of these tools. We've got the ability for you and I to be talking from 6,000 miles away, whatever it is, costing us nothing, and typically Wi-Fi allowing great quality. But, you know, we got all of these tools, but we've still got the biggest business failure rate in history. So, you know, arguably it's easier than it's ever been to set up businesses, but it's also harder than it's ever been to stand out. And we've got kind of a world that's been taught to go and get its qualifications and its accreditations. And we've got these people that are great at designing software and making cakes. But then they missed the memo about, well, you're going to have to learn to sell or network or do stuff with people. And hey, big news is, they don't want to do that. They want to design their software. They want to bake their cakes. They want to work on the cars. So we've got a failing, or Stephen Covey, when he was alive, you know, in his work, 7 Habits, used to call it an incomplete paradigm. So from everything we can see, we've got to now reinvent how business is done. And the other fancy bit, collaboration economy, is, you know, we're now way beyond the days of me sell, you buy, an A-B relationship, because today's customer can be tomorrow's affiliate, and the day after that's a referrer that introduces and becomes a partner. So business has got to be seen as a much more a virtuous circle now, rather than give me your money today and I'll see you again in 5 years when you need it, or if you haven't found a different supplier. So in order to collaborate, we've got to look at business differently. Currently, business, you know, the 80% failure rate inside 5 years, 96% or whatever it is over 10, there is something wrong. And that's where certainly a lot of our work is around really helping people to look at business and why they're in it and how they structure it differently. Because if they do it the same as everybody else, the chances are they've got an 80+% failure rate. So we need a new business paradigm. Mute, you've gone mute.
I've gone muted. Oh geez, I love that concept, partially because we both do similar things in that we fill that gap in for people. But I recently shared my morning motivation podcast. And by recently, I mean, I recently recorded. There it is. There's a link to it. I recorded them ahead of time. So I think this episode's coming out like tomorrow or the next day. But saying that the most successful people in the world are great at one or two things.
Right.
They're not great at everything. They're great at one or two things. And then they're also great at delegating or hiring out. So if you want to be fixing the cars or baking the cakes, you hire someone to bring the business. The problem is, who do you hire? Because most salespeople you hire off the street can't sell, and
right.
Most marketing companies can't market. So how do you actually get those solutions? So what is the new paradigm? How does Biz Connectors provide that solution?
A big part of the new paradigm, and it's funny, for different reasons, I was kind of connecting. Literally, I've got the little sort of pad from years ago of the original paradigm research that we did, and that without really thinking about it, what we knew when we hired and worked with the first generation of coaches, sort of early 90s, that the problem that has grown, and one of the lines Joel Barker said at the time was, a business isn't just a paradigm, it's a series of paradigms, because you've got views on sales and you've got manufacturing don't want to talk to sales. So you've got this sort of interwoven collection of people's biases and people's way of doing things, and departments having territories, and all of that is this kind of messy paradigm stuff. So the new way starts to become, we've got to get back away from the silos of departments that did a great job at the time. You know, when Henry Ford did his production line thing, it did a great job. But then Volvo years later started to realize it had depersonalized the production line and then organized people into teams. And guess what? Production went up. So we've got to make that leap again. And whether or not it's the Biz Connector is just a headline name of a new profession. Because if you take through all of those changes, what's happened is, because everybody was told to go and get qualifications and accreditations and this, that, and the other, And again, in both of our countries, different levels been of it, but the same outcome. You were never the most popular person at a dinner party if you were in, I sell cars or I sell double glazed windows. You were, oh my God, but if you're the engineer or you're the doctor, then everybody wants to talk to you. Well, a fun challenge. And when I'm talking to the guy who knows a guy, that for people like you and I to make is that you and I will be, as symbols of this change, the people everybody wants to talk to, because the old joke that's become sort of a line that people have adopted, really, where 5 years ago it was about finding any information on a lot of subjects or the right information. Today, now, it's about getting rid of the wrong information because we're all so deluged. And the little analogy was, if you want to find the needle in a haystack, well, the quickest way is to burn the hay, because the only thing that's going to be left is the needle. And that's what the Biz Connector does, because when we started talking to people that they don't like sales, you can't say the sales word. And then you go on these networking calls, and I think I did last night, and there's very nice people on it, but you ask them why they're on the call. Why are they investing their time on that call? And you get a bit of meeting nice people, and you never know who you're going to meet, but there was no strategic business reasons. And historically, what they feed back to us is they don't want to network and they don't enjoy networking, but they feel they've got to go because they haven't got a better alternative, but they don't really know how it grows their business. Well, what if somebody else could do that for you? And that today is called a Biz Connector, and it's defining it as a profession that's getting everybody to go, oh, wow. So how do I find the person? How do I work with that person? All of those things that a new paradigm shift leads to. Because it's not really about the profession. It's about the difference in the way we design businesses that all of this stuff is predicated on. The Biz Connector role is just a headline role, because nearly every business we find wants access to one once they know they can. And that creates more distribution, more deals for everybody. That's how the big fat Western world can grow their economies again. We've got to get out there doing transactions. And to do transactions, you've got to talk to people. So for people listening who are the I want to bake the cakes, I want to design the sort of technical business owners, as we call them. If they now get the message call, they can design their businesses differently, and they can come and talk to people like you and I as to how to start that process. Then we are creating that new business paradigm. That it's a doingness. You don't need to go to 3 years to university to learn this. This is a penny drop in that goes, got it.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. And something I wanted to share that I think you'll resonate with this, as you may have noticed, my background suddenly shifted to the Ninja networking format.
Yes, it did.
So I came up with this because if you have the chance to use the word ninja, let's see if I can point to it. Yeah, there is ninja in your business. You do. And I realized networking starts with N and affiliate starts with A, and I was only 3 words short of an acronym. So I figured out the other 3 words, and then I realized they were in the right order.
Yes.
A 5-level rubric. So level 1 is people you're talking about. Networking. I should network. So this is the person who gets on a call or goes to a networking event, and I run into these whenever I go to a chamber event. There's people there. Yeah, I'm just looking to get out in the community and see who I can find. Or if they're a little more sophisticated, they're looking for their customers in the networking event.
Right.
Level 2 is looking for introductions. So they're not asking if you want to buy. They're asking you to refer to their customers, which works in a structured environment. So BNI is level 2. Because you get to know, you build the know, like, and trust. You've got the referral confidence curve, and that gives you a good sense. Yes, Adam, ninja. That gives you a good sense of yes, I want to refer this person. It does not work in the cold environment. If I go into if I go to a chamber meeting and I say my ideal customer is, could you refer me? If you meet anyone looking to buy, take a look at their insurance, send them my way. I will definitely not do that because I don't know you. Actually watched a Dan Locke video today where he's talking about exactly that thing, that people would come up to him and be like, hey, I got this program. Could you refer me to your clients? And he's like, no, my clients are really big, important high rollers, and I don't know you from a hole in the wall. And then the third level is non-competitive partners. That's where you build relationships, and you're not looking for your customers. You're looking for introductions to opportunities, people you
Yeah.
can partner with.
We call that one referral partnerships, non-competing people. Yeah.
Yeah, people you can build a relationship with.
Yeah.
And then the next level is joint ventures. That's where you're actually putting something together in some fashion, possibly a one-off, possibly building a summit. And then, of course, affiliates is when you take that to scale. So it's not just, if you send me some people, I'll give you a commission. It's, I've got a launch coming up. We have 63 partners, and let me know if you're interested. I'll send you the swipe copy and the links, and we'll get you in the system. We're doing it's plug and play and ready to go. It's very sophisticated. And what I find is the first 3 levels anyone can go to. You can go straight to non-competitive partners. It's just changing what you're looking for. And then the 4th and 5th level requires some infrastructure. To do a joint venture, you have to have something to plug into their stuff.
I'm thinking of my best friend from college. He's really good with these acronyms and things like that. And I'm just wondering whether the thing that we really see as the future, and it uses all of those things. I'm just wondering whether you could put a C at the end and get Ninjak. It doesn't really work, but because all of those things that you're talking are now the new marketplace, aren't they? And that a bit male about it for a second, that we were taught to be, the joke is that, men can only do one thing at a time, and it's the hunter type thing. And joking aside, it's almost like we've got to take those blinders off now because of people today, customers that become affiliates and partners and everything else. And almost, and it's the kind of stuff that you eat up, and because you do this stuff all day long, is that we almost see it now as, and we're playing with terms like community business building, because in the coaching industry, from the first generation of coaches, those early 90s people, we saw then this problem that they wanted to deliver but didn't want to sell. And in those days, they had to pick up the phone and call people cold because there wasn't a BNI on every doorstep. That they had to do it. They didn't want to. But in our system, I could do the selling of the bigger programs, and they could get paid the lead, and I could sell it, and they could deliver it. So we already had that collaborative pay plan. We didn't call it that in those days. It was just like an old insurance system. It was because that's what the chairman's background was on. But we're starting to get to now a kind of a line that I used years ago of and it was a true story of family friends. And the man in the house in Sydney, it was Australia, and he pointed to this wall across the road and he said, 10 local guys, him and a few others, built that wall. And where he was taking me in the story was they all started to get together. And they, it was a typical immigrant area, like in most cities, a bit run down, and they turned this into one of the most exclusive areas of suburb within Sydney. And it came from the example of this wall, where his line was kind of, well, 10 people can build that wall more than 10 times faster than one can. And it was starting to realize this. If most businesses actually suffer from the same problems, and because of that salesy networking stuff, and everybody's being taught to be the deliverers, we know what the number one problem is. It's lead generation and all of that sales conversion stuff. Well, why don't we as businesses start to actively and strategically think about who can help me? Who can I team up with? It becomes a who, not how strategy as one of the biggest click moments to shift everything about the way you build a business from the moment you start to get familiar with that whole ninja approach. And I'll call it Ninjak, because community business building is a game changer for people.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely it. It's shifting. Part of having an abundant mindset, because if you have this "I win, you lose" mindset, then a lot of this isn't possible. Although one thing, as I've developed the concept, I've realized that even at level 1, there's better ways to do it. Because the wrong way to do level 1 is either the I'm looking to beat anybody, or the shoving business cards into people's hands and pitching them right there in the room. The right way to do it is explore their needs. What are your challenges? How can I help you? What's your problem? Not what's your problem, but like, what's your problem? What solution would you like to find while you're here? And people love sharing their problems and love telling you what's wrong. And if you can offer them an introduction, a piece of advice, or a product, they're going to be happy to take it. So if you're asking them for their challenges and if you're a mechanic and you say, hey, what's your challenge? And they mention a few things and then mention like, oh yeah, my car keeps breaking down. Really? Does it? I might be able to help you.
I might know somebody.
Yeah. Would you like some help? And that's I call them the 6 magic words. Would you like help with that?
Yeah.
Because once someone says that, so if you're talking to someone and they're telling you about their lead generation issues and how like, yeah, it's fired another salesman because they can't deliver and the marketing's crap and we just don't know how to find people. Would you like help with that? Well, yeah. What do you got? So, then you're selling at level 1 because you're talking to the person, but it doesn't feel like sales. It feels like, here, I've got a solution for you. Do you want it? Yeah, I do. What's it cost? Cost this much. Done. Because if you have the problem, the price isn't an issue.
Absolutely. But again, you see how much this is a mindset shift, though, or back to the title. That's a different paradigm, isn't it?
So I have a question. How do you find you have the right partner? Which I'm not quite sure what they mean. Probably around non-competitive partners, I'm assuming.
Yes, as you've touched on non-competitive. Yeah. Well, if the one answer that might help that person is where we used to put together what we call referral partnerships, and we might have them on something like WhatsApp, where there might be 10 managing directors or CEOs in US speak, and they want to be in a peer-to-peer group where they can kind of share notes and they don't want to be in a pitching environment. That's one, but there's also closer to the piece that you're talking, the more marketing version of that is where maybe you find other suppliers. What's one of the ladies in Canada she calls it? I think she calls it the marketing chain. It's almost like if you sell flowers, and a lot of people buy flowers for marriages, for weddings and the likes. Well, once you start to look, who else supplies to that wedding, you can all connect up with each other because you don't compete, because people, they're all going to buy those things. Well, if you get a group of 7, 8, 10 suppliers who don't supply the same thing, but often talk to the same people, then you've got the basis of a great referral partnership, which would be classically your non-competitive partners deal. So maybe that helps the person that asked that question.
Absolutely. And and in terms of, I think also like what I'm hearing in that question, although I could be reading into it because short question, is how do I avoid the wrong partner? And
right.
And the thing, at joint ventures, at level 4, it's more important to not do the wrong one, because then you're running something together. There might be an investment. At level 3, non-competitive partners, it's a relationship. I'm going to help you. You're going to help me. So if they're the wrong partner, they just don't help. They don't hurt. Well, I mean, unless they're really catastrophically crazy or something. But for the most part, when it goes wrong, it doesn't go wrong. It just doesn't catch.
Nothing happens.
Yeah, maybe they send you 1 or 2 people. It's not a good fit, and it just sort of fades. It doesn't burn out. It just fades away. But you can be non-competitive partners with any number of people.
Yeah.
So if you're the florist, you can work with a dozen caterers, and maybe one caterer sends you all kinds of business, and one caterer can't remember your name every time you meet. But you can work with as many as you can, and to the point where it almost gets to go from individual partners to community of partners, where you've got a number of different people that you're working with. So instead of worrying about the wrong one, the right one, it's work with a variety of different people and find different ways to help each other and paying it forwards. Because with a lot of the people I'm non-competitive partners with, people I help out, I don't keep score. I don't know how many they've sent me. I don't know how many I've sent them. I mean, I keep a list of introductions, but I rarely reach out to someone and say, hey, I introduced you to someone a month ago. How'd that go? I don't have the attention span. That I talk about introvert versus extrovert style networking, and an introvert superpower is organization. So the introvert will reach out 3 weeks later and say, how'd that introduction go? Did anything come of it? I want to dial in. The extrovert's like, hope that worked for you. What was your name again? Which is, I'll make introductions to people.
But that's a good subject, that, Michael, though, isn't it? Because before we ever, gave it the grand title of business connectors and the likes, because of my nature, exactly the same things that you do, that I started, I connected some people that went off and did very big deals together. And I got what we call in the UK a drink, which means $20 or something. They went and did deals with millions. I got a drink. Well, thank you, guys. Now, I could complain about that, but I'm not really entitled to, because I didn't introduce them on any commercial terms. I just opened the door and they were smart enough to walk through. But what was more typically going to happen wasn't that. There was some notable examples like that. There was also some examples of people who ripped off all my material. So there's goods and bads in this. But I think the main real point was that we started to see where I put people together, where one famously he works with people coming out of the military and coming back into Civvy Street, and he can get grants for them. So he needs to get a supply of jobs, and he needs to get accreditation for them. They're like qualifications. So I knew somebody at a university who had the accreditation stuff, and he had the supply of people. So we met up at one of our motorway service stations, when you could do that before COVID. And I said, Carol, meet Kevin, Kevin, meet Carol, and la, 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 la. And then kind of left them to it. And then a month later, say, I think I'm a business extrovert, but I'm not sure I'm an extrovert completely. But I like this whole, front end piece. So because I had ongoing relationship with them, I must have said to one of them, so how's it going with the other one? To which they go, let's say Carol, oh no, it didn't really work. I go, well, what the heck happened? Because you've got what he needed and he's got what you needed. There's a perfect, and that moment told us that just because we brought them together didn't mean that they saw what we saw. Mm-hmm. And it started to be a key kind of moment that said, right, we've got to stay in this deal to help them get that initial traction. Because if you got it going, the chances are they kept it going. But if they didn't get it going, they wandered off as though, oh, that was nice to meet Kevin, but nothing really happened. So these were little nudges towards, that was a deal that became very profitable for both of them. But without us as the introducer staying in the process, it would never have happened. So that's the loss factor on the collaboration economy bit. The macroeconomic bit is deals that could be done are currently not being done because the people involved just don't see it that way. And that's where the role of people like us starts to help a lot of people, because you're the catalyst, the glue, all of those kind of deal facilitators.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and very often, so obviously for my clients, those are the ones, if they're paying me, I'm going to stay in there and make sure they get, we have follow-up calls. I say, should these people, how'd it go? But on the other hand, there's part of the value that a client pays for versus the people who have the benefit of being near me when I'm in an introductory mood, which mostly means awake. Then I'll meet somebody. Oh, you know who you need to meet? You need to meet Nikki. Boom. Shoot off an email. You guys should meet. And that's the end of my involvement. If they do something with it, great. If they don't do something with it, cool. I neither know nor care. I have done my part. I've made the introduction, and it's up to them to do. If they do something with it, I feel good about that. If not, I made a whole bunch more introductions. So
maybe
introductions easy.
Maybe what you're highlighting, it's almost like the difference between, I think I can do it with reptiles, where they kind of lay the eggs, bury them at the side and leave it. And then it's kind of, you're on your own, guys. And the process clearly works as against the mammalian one, which is a bit more, just because you did the act and then 9 months later, well, you then got to look after it. So I think on that piece, you might be a bit more reptilian, he says, to characterize, and I might be a bit more reptilian because I'm a bit more in the relation, and the biz connectors kind of almost end up as like a local rep. They go back to people and really what's the next thing, and it becomes almost like, when I was a kid out of college, that was my first job, what we called a local rep for a big soap company, and I had people I went back to every month. And even in those days, I used to go looking for new business because I liked that process, which nobody else did and nobody was incentivized to do. But maybe we've touched on something on reptile and mammalia, because there is different approaches, as you say. In some cases, Joe meet Billy, off you go. I'm out of here, I've done my job. Or if it's more strategic than that, the biz connector role stays in that loop, because a lot of the time, technical people, again, back to that distinction, Michael, don't see that opportunity. And you've really got to work to get them to see that, because it's not their natural focus. Whereas you say, if you're awake, you're probably networking. Me too. But most people aren't like that, clearly.
Well, and I assume that your biz connectors, if they're staying in there, they're getting paid for it somehow.
Yes, because they've got other ongoing income streams that come out of that. Yeah. The more they build that relationship, the more other ways that they can help and they can introduce to other people in the community. Yeah.
Well, that's it. My attention is proportional to the revenue. Not saying super. I'll make connections. Two things that I'm willing to do for free is make connections and give advice. But I'll make connections fairly free. Someone sends me a message, hey, do you know such and such? And I'll be like, yeah, I do. Here, let me shoot a message over for you. No problem. Like that's 3 minutes of my time. Might help out. Might help a friend. Cool. If you need me to pay attention to it, if you need me to remember I made that introduction and then advise and follow up and hold your hand, like that's my attention. Attention costs money. And the same thing with advice. If someone says, hey, I need to find a job, what should I do? I'll take 10 minutes and be like, do this and that and this and reach out and use this strategy. Blah, blah. If you're going to argue with me, or you need a mindset shift, or you need, some real coaching,
you need to go find a coach.
You're paying for. Well, I'm trained to do that, but I get paid to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with that stuff for free.
Yeah.
If I'm messing around with all that, that's work.
But again, I think you're highlighting. Cool, I think you're highlighting something important that a lot of people listening, as what do they naturally do, and let them, because it's somehow being able to do that which you find natural, isn't it? Or once the penny drops, you'll then do it. Because again, I think what you're kind of describing why one of the things that people might be interested in is that you and I are looking to put together like a best practice group together on this whole subject of networking to flesh this out, because I definitely see now that the commercial, being clear as to, in some cases, some of our bigger clients will pay a lot of money for a target introduction. They want to speak to the CMO of company X, and in their business model, they see big value in paying. Now, we might have to do a lot of research to get that door open for them in a particular way. But I think what you're describing is literally, yeah, I know a good plumber, it's a part of your model is you will always do that for free. And the other end, what we're kind of saying is we want to get more feedback on the value of the process, because whilst what you're doing is clearly beneficial to lots of people, we also, in our best practice discussion and why we want different models and different views, because a lot of people then will say back to us, well, I get all these introductions and nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
Which we would go, well, what did you want for it to happen? Or did you have a business model? So you, in that situation, have done your job. You've done your grand turtles laying your eggs on the beach and you've gone. That was your model. If they wanted closer to our model, which is help me explore and do the deal, that's where this whole exploration of the new business paradigm, and particularly this biz connecting piece, comes in. Because again, most people are going to, I get it, but I don't know which role best suits me until they come up nicely with a guy like you and I that can develop that conversation.
Yep. Yeah. So James.
Right, there you go. Wives are smart.
Yep. Yeah.
How are you making it? Well, that we hear that time and time and time again.
Yeah, but at the same time, like what I've tried to find ways to be generous that are cheap. So, for example, I've got I got a banner for it now. The Power 5 podcast. It's free. I answer business questions. Anyone can send me a question. I'll answer it in 5 minutes, and they'll get it on my podcast. But it costs me 5 minutes to do it, and then I've got a piece of content for the podcast. If somebody sends me a Facebook message and says, hey, do you know someone who can help me with my whatever, then I'm happy to help. And that's a place where if I've got someone who I won't get paid for the introduction, I'll make the introduction. If I've got someone who I will get paid for the introduction, I will, of course, still make it. But I'm more likely to get them asking to have the opportunity to make a commissioned referral because I generously gave them free introductions last time. And most people don't care if I get paid or not for the introduction I make for them. Better people prefer that I get paid for the introductions I make because they know they're getting value from it. But, nobody that I want to associate has a problem with me getting paid for referring them to a solution.
Right.
So by being generous with the introductions, people know, oh, I need something. Let me go ask Michael. Because maybe the first introduction I make doesn't get me anything, and the second one doesn't get me anything, and the third doesn't get me
creating
anything.
the awareness through that. And then you've been a go-giver, haven't you?
Yep. And then the fourth one, that goes to something where I get a $200 commission for the referral, and I just got $200 from sending an email, which is a pretty good return on my time. What's that convert to? About $1,500 an hour. So it's
not bad if you can do 10 a week, is it?
Yeah, not too bad. And so now I'm to the point where I'll make $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month in commissions from solving people's problems. And not one of those people who I've gotten a commission from has ever come back to me and been unhappy about the thing they bought.
Right.
So they're happy for that. But that only happens because I gave away a lot of free introductions. Right. And there's just a question of plugging in something to that machine that actually turned that energy into money. Building. And sometimes as simple as if I talk to someone, usually low ticket things, there's no point in keeping track. If I'm going to refer someone to your $70 service, there you go, take it. If I'm going to refer someone to your $5,000 service, I'm probably going to get 10, 20%. So, and that's usually as simple as, hey, if I ever send you someone, what do you give me? 1,000, 500? What do you do? And they're like, 500. And almost everyone, it's a simple handshake arrangement because I don't tend to do it at scale with any given client. And if I go back to them and find out they got a sale from me and I didn't get paid for it, well, that spigot does not tend to continue spigoting.
Right, but see, that's that gray zone area that we started to see that when the guy turned up and said to me, I've been using it's like a workbook program that I did. And I don't know how we were introduced. And he went and got these green photocopied in those days, copies of these workbooks and said he'd been training his sales team using my materials for 2 years. And somebody had given and you get, in that, he had stolen, if you've been, because he'd literally taken the material, copied it, used it and stuff. But again, it was random how it happened, but it started to tell me this stuff's got to be acknowledged more because people don't know how to value it. And I think you and I have touched on it before. There were Jewish business guys that I used to work with when I was a kid, and they were nicely the stereotype. They were really, really good business guys. They're really robust, and they knew each other a long time. And we were selling them some heavy equipment and cars and things. And I just remember one of them saying, who introduced the deal of whatever it was that came, we were working on. And I said to him, what do you mean, who introduced the deal? And we called this person the Mr. 15% in those days, because you're talking mid-80s.
Yep.
And he said very, very specific, and again, very robust, experienced business guys. He said, well, we factor in, if somebody brought the deal to the table, whatever the figure was, 10, 15%. So they built the deal on that. And I'd go back probably to my mother in those days and say, well, I paid this introduction, and she'd make some comment that might have been a bit risque in those days of different religions had different stereotype, but meant with good intention. But she was making a point that was sort of frowned on in certainly at that time, but in the community and that group of guys at the time. He just said, well, if nobody brings the deal to the table, there is no deal to be done. So, of course, they have to be recognized. So in that sort of old world way of doing business, they absolutely had this clear and everybody understood that. And they didn't say, well, all you did was do the introduction. It's like saying, well, somebody that might have introduced you to your wife, English jokes aside, that on the presumption of that was a good thing, wasn't it? Well, it's fairly significant, but we don't want to measure that and we don't want to value that in business. And a lot of the trends of the new business paradigm, because we're moving towards performance pay to equalize the risk between the seller and the buyer, because the buyer has been taking the risk for the length of time you and I and more have been on this earth. That has to change because the buyer's fed up with that. Well, if it's a pair of shoes, unless they fall apart, I get a pair of shoes. But if it's a management service and I didn't get any value from this online course you taught me to run. So we've got to make that process more balanced between the parties.
Well, I think some of the bias that we're moving past, the old paradigm, is a very elitist paradigm, you might say. Because there's definitely this vibe that I found in a number of places that basically, so it almost goes back to like in biblical times, if you were sick or poor, it's because you were a sinner and God didn't smile on you. Because if you weren't a sinner, God would smile on you and make you healthy and rich. So if you're sick or poor, that's your fault because you displeased God. And that kind of traveled down through the ages in this almost like noble mindset of if you have to work, well, I suppose that's okay for some people, if you haven't pleased God enough that he made you a noble. And then to the like old money, new money concept, if you have so little money, you have to worry about referral commissions. Oh, well, I guess. If you need money, then clearly you're an inferior person, and you're a mercenary, you're a merchant. Ew. And I think we're getting away from that because so many of the business leaders didn't start rich. Everyone's new money now. Almost none of the business leaders are old money. So there's no honor in being old money anymore. But that idea of like commissions, referral commissions, ew, you just do it because you want to. You do it because you're nice. But like my business, which is built on a combination of retainers and referral commissions, I have no other business. Like I'm not selling courses. I'm not selling management packages. I'm not.
This is websites. The thing you do. It's not the add-on. It's not the spare rib. It is the rib cage.
Yeah. This is the thing. And it took me a while to figure out. Oh, I could stand in the middle, and make those connections because effectively it's marketing. I connect indirectly buyers to sellers, or I connect sellers to partners to buyers.
Right.
One way or another, I'm in there bringing things together, and I should get paid for that.
And why not?
Yeah, and that's definitely a shift, and it's interesting to me because I'm in the space that I refer to now as the abundance-minded entrepreneurs.
Okay.
My thanks to Sebastian Cruz for helping me come up with that term, which is now I run the Abundance-Minded Entrepreneur Summit. But most people,
you would, because that's what you do with that kind of information.
Yeah, so most people I associate with are in that mindset of I want to create value. I want to create abundance. You help me make money, I'll help you make money. And part of this because it's digital. Like in the non-digital world, you couldn't do it because the margins are lower. But in the digital world, there's so many things that have massive margins that you can make a $10,000 program and give away a 10% commission and do those kinds of things so that there's enough to share with everyone. And there's a lot of value, especially with the world being so big. You need a lot of Sherpas. You need a lot of navigators to be like, over here, I found one. It's over here. The world's a big place. I mean, I'm going to be making an introduction between two people I met in Malta. I have not left Connecticut. I've never been to Malta, but I met two people in Malta and I'm connecting them to each other. And they're in the same 500,000 person island. They don't know each other. So you expand that to the English speaking world of 2.5 billion or the whole world of 7-8 billion. You need a lot of people whose job can simply be putting people together. There's a huge value in that.
Well, we always say, when somebody asked me, well, what's the size of the market for business connectors? And we just thought about the UK marketplace, and notwithstanding COVID for a second, but in normal health conditions, if there's 100,000 doctors in the UK, which thankfully, most of the time, very few people, you see a doctor every 5 years, maybe, in the normal health. Well, if 100,000 doctors in the UK alone can live pretty well, what's the need for a free at the point of contact resource called a biz connector that most businesses can get benefits from pretty much immediately? Then you kind of go, well, I don't know what the size of the market is, but I know that there's 6 million businesses in the UK. and all of them have that need, they might solve it in a range of different ways. They're doing something about it now, but they find it difficult. So I don't know that if you start to apply some figures, you go that just by serving 20% of that marketplace and from what the biz connector can earn and therefore add to businesses, well, you can start to grow the business base. You can add 200 billion or whatever it is to the British economy. I mean, why not think big? Because this is a conduit role. And if you think about it, it's not that long ago before you get back to certain people called blacksmiths took your teeth out and they got the job done. They had the tools in those days to do it. But I'm reliably informed it wasn't a particularly nice process. Somebody else had to change the paradigm and go, I think there's a market in just this thing about, forget the horseshoes bit, I think the market's in the teeth bit, to which people would have laughed at him. Well, guess what? Welcome to dentistry. Look at the size of that marketplace now. And for me, that's what's happening in this connecting, there's so much good stuff out there, but there's also a lot of less than good stuff. Then the ability is to get them together. Well, that has a huge value on an individual, on a local, regional, international economy level. It has a value, huge value.
Yeah. And I think so. Income maldistribution is generally a bad thing. If you have giant clusters of wealth in places, that means that the people at the low end can't afford to buy stuff. But the upside to it is it means the people at the high end have stacks of money, not physicals. They're not dragons, like piles of gold.
Not anymore.
But they have stacks of money. If you can provide value to them. So, there's the one school of thought, I'd be like, burn it down, tax them, spread the wealth. But the other school of thought is, how can I get some of that? They've got, if someone's making $5 million a year personally, is there something that you can do for them that they'd be willing to give you 1% of their money for?
Right.
Probably. There's probably something, 1%, 1% is not a lot. So is there some value you can provide that would give you 1% of their money? And could you do it for 5 of them? Well, now you're making $250,000. Pretty decent living. Because you provided value to the people who have money. And if you can provide value, and that's kind of the niche I found with the networking concierge, is the business making $10,000 a year or $50,000 a year doesn't need me, can't afford me. But the business making $5 million a year they don't have time to be out there networking, meeting all these people, doing one-to-ones, running podcasts, going to summits, doing all these things I do, and the things I love doing. So they're happy to pay me to go out and do it for them because they know it needs to be done. They know they need to meet those people. They just don't have time to, figure it out. And then there's all kinds of things. I talk to artists who joke about, back in the Middle Ages, rich people used to be patrons of the arts, and they'd have an artist in residence who would just paint, and they could be like, well, I didn't paint it, but I funded it, and so I'm kind of an artist myself. And I wish they'd still do that. And I say to them, have you asked? Like, do you think a modern millionaire would be willing to pay you $30,000 a year plus room and board to just make art in their mansion all day? Because I bet there's millionaires who would totally do that.
Mm-hmm.
First, you have to be a good artist. And second, you have to ask them. But I have never spoken to a single artist who's ever approached a rich person and said, how about I be your artist in residence? How about you cover my bills, cover my basic expenses, and I'll produce art, and you can call yourself my patron.
Now, I love that.
Yeah.
There is a but, however. It's a positive but, because, and it's interesting that where we used to live a bit further north of here, by doing caricatures, clearly an artist. But behind him in this booth were all the stuff, by the looks of it, he really wanted to paint. So I go and chat him up and talk to him and stuff and go, how much do you like doing caricatures? And he just looked at me and he said, I've got to pay the bills, haven't I? And we had a little 3-minute conversation. What he's saying was he had to do that because he had to do something that gave him the time to do that, because people like him, some of them, if you gave them the idea that you just did, some of them might act on it. But if if some of them knew somebody called a biz connector,
Mhm.
they might get on the phone and go talk to those wealthy people and say, have you ever considered? Because that's again the skill and the liking of doing that, because there's what you and I aren't alone in this, in terms of it's liking that possibility of causing something to happen that wouldn't happen without us, and the world waking up to, wow, that has value for every party in that process. Because the painter in that one, whether he's the guy I saw or the guy you're talking about, either way, they get to do more painting and somebody gets more value. So everybody wins based on this little third wheel.
Yep. Yeah, and just have to think about, well, and that's a great point, because what the reason the artists aren't doing is they're artists. You know, they're not salespeople. They're not comfortable approaching people. They probably have imposter syndrome up the wazoo, because most people do if they haven't worked on it, and especially artists, because art's so subjective. They look at their own art and they're like, it's terrible. Everything I paint is terrible. And everyone else looks at them like, that's amazing. What are you talking about? No, it's awful.
I've set it on fire.
Yep. But if they had someone who could help make the connection for them, and that again could be something that's very simple. Again, this modern world where we're more comfortable being honest about money, the connector could approach, approach the potential patron and say, here's the deal. You're going to pay them $20,000 a year plus room and board plus this, that, and the other that they might need. You're going to give me a $3,000 finder's fee, and that's the deal. And they could write themselves right into it and be very, very upfront and honest with how it's going to work.
You know what, Michael, you could be describing, between you and I, there could be a list of what are the ultimate dreams of very wealthy people that we could say, how many of these on this list, because we can go and find them. And I'm partially joking, but I'm also serious in that people can't ask for that which they don't know exists or don't believe it to exist. And that's part of the problem to a degree, that if somebody comes along and says to you, one of the early stories of BizConnecting in the early days was, we have a thing called a research and development grant. And it's effectively a tax rebate that the government gives you, and they want to give it you because for every pound they put out, they get 8 back, apparently, however that formula is worked out. But when somebody, and I got the little 90-second video that described it, and it's nothing to do the application. There's guys that will do the application because they get paid a percentage of the commission type thing. That same deal. But when we found out that less than 2% that qualify for these grants ever even apply, and when we went out and spoke to our clients and said R&D, blah, 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 the standard response we got was, well, R&D doesn't apply to us because they saw it as people in white coats in laboratories, scientists. So famously, a scrap metal merchant, I don't know whether you call them that in the States, but the guys that take cars and strip them down and take all the parts of scrap metal. And apparently, I think he was doing something with the way he stored and crushed the engines, which meant that there wasn't the oil drop onto the land. So it was a good environmental thing. This guy got what in US terms would be about $140,000 back. Cost him nothing to do this. And then the message that they started, why don't I know about this? Because you're busy being a scrap metal merchant's one answer. And then they start to go, well, if you can find me that, what else can you find me? What else don't I know about? Guess what? And we weren't doing it for the reasons of being a biz connector then. We were just doing our sort of a lead generation system that got people free ways to make money they didn't know about. But they were pointing us towards this. People are so busy, they haven't got time to find out these things. We have. So you are bringing them those, I didn't know they existed. Mm-hmm. Wow. If it doesn't cost me anything to find out, what are we doing? Everybody wins from that process. New business paradigm. It is win-win. It is.
Yes. That's fantastic. New business paradigm. So this has been great. We are coming to the top of the hour once again, but even with one guest, still an amazing show. Maybe because it was one guest, is an amazing show.
Who knows?
Who knows? But it worked out very well. It was good to have the chance to really kind of dive into this. And it's always fun to explore this. I mean, I came up with this concept as a lark, really. I'm like, I can spell the word ninja. and then discovered I had I had an actual rubric to work with, and the more I dive into it, the more robust it becomes. So it's fascinating to look at different ways the collaboration. And my big vision is if you could take this to the nth degree, you could change everything. If everyone collaborated more, everything would be better for everyone, and so much winning as possible. So it's always exciting to talk with you and to share ideas and talk about different things. And your website is, of course, bizconnectors.org.
It is indeed.
Is that where someone would go if they want to hire one or be one?
Yes, or use one, or all that stuff's there. It's about to be rebranded in a new form, but nice. It's all there.
Okay. And of course, people can find my new Power 5 podcast where I answer your questions on business, marketing, networking, sales, and life in 5 minutes or less, 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, at guywhoknowsaguy.com/power5. And then you get an email in all those 4 days telling you about the next one. And be sure to check out, if this is of interest to you, Entrepreneur, June 6th at guywhoknowsaguy.com/summits. So thank you once again, Mark, for being on the show. This has been super fun talking to you. I could probably talk even longer, but I think an hour's, although we still have viewers, an hour in, we still have viewers watching.
Wow,
so
we've done well.
I think we did something right. So high five.
Well done, viewers, for sticking with it.
There we go. High five. There we go.
Oh, yeah. I've got the other way. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, we got it. Okay. Yeah, you can do it here because it's fixed windows. You can't do it on Zoom.
I've got a virtual way of doing it.
That is creepy. That's like something out of a horror movie.
Gonna come out of many uses.
Yep.
Yes.
The trick is you need to coordinate with someone to have that ahead of time.
Yes.
So when you reach out with that, then all of a sudden they've got
if they've got one coming back.
Yeah, like you reach out under the camera and they reach over.
Yes, that could be quite effective.
Yep. James is still here. Thanks for watching all the way to the end.
Well done, James.
Extra credit for you. James is a great guy. Have you met James?
I don't know James myself, no.
Well, we're going to fix that because I think you two should meet. Because you guys are, we're only 3,000 miles apart, but you and James are 6,000 miles apart, but you should still meet.
Right, well, it's nothing today, is it? The bulk of the people I know are thousands of miles away.
I'm within 9,000 miles of everyone I talk to in a straight line.
Yes.
Yep. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Join us here every week at 2 p.m. Eastern time or 1 hour ago, whatever time it is where you are on Fridays, except for June 17th. I will not be here then, but every other Friday I am here. June 17th is an event which, Mark, I'm going to tell you about when we get off the air. And if you want to know about the secret event that's very elite, reach out to me because it might be for you. It might not, but I can't talk about it on the air. But it's really cool. It's worth not running the show for. So, Mark, stick around for a second because I have a couple things for you. Everyone else, come back next week.